Good evening. Thanks for joining us on Business 360. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening. Artificial intelligence-related stocks give a real jolt to investors worldwide. Stocks tumble across Asia and Europe after Wall Street loses $3 trillion in value. Nvidia, Oracle and AMD lead the sell-off. Shares of SoftBank down over 10% in Tokyo. Weak global cues drag the Wall Street lower. The Sensex down over 400 points. Nifty manages to hold above 26,000. All major indices close in the red. The Indian rupee sinks to a new low. $1 now costs nearly 90 rupees, weakening risk appetite and uncertainty over the India-US trade deal weigh on sentiment. US sanctions on Russian oil takes effect today. Reliance Industries stops importing Russian oil. US imposes sanctions on 2 Indian entities and individuals alleging involvement in crude oil trade with Iran. Mahindra Group is looking to grow in multiples, not percentages, says Group CEO Anish Shah. The head of 14 group companies come together on television for the first time on their annual Investor Day on CNBC-TV18. Anish Shah says the market value of their growth gems has not been captured, promises big value unlock in the days ahead. That's an exclusive. SEBI Chairman Tuhin Kanta Pandey says they are actively examining including real estate and infrastructure investment trusts in market indices in a calibrated way, calls enhancing their access and liquidity a priority. Online trading platform Groww reports a 12% jump in profits as lower employee expenses offsets higher marketing spend, but revenue and active clients decline year-on-year even as market share expands. Airports Authority of India kicks off its largest modernization drive, plans to revamp 65 airports with modern equipment and air traffic control towers at an estimated cost of 17,000 crores. That's an exclusive. Ukraine's President Zelenskyy says he's ready to work with the United States on their plan to end the war with Russia. The plan requires Ukraine to make some painful concessions, including giving up some territory and downsizing its military by 40%. At least 5 people are dead after an earthquake of 5.7 magnitude strikes a city near Dhaka. Over 200 injured. Strong tremors felt in Kolkata and cities in northeast India as well. Donald Trump Jr. tours Vantara, the wildlife rehabilitation initiative led by Anant Ambani. Trump Jr. also visits temples in Jamnagar along with Anant Ambani and Radhika Merchant. Well, let's start with the global market action. A sell-off on account of AI valuations sparking a sell-off worldwide. Asian markets slumped in trade this morning, dragged lower by a tech-led sell-off that we saw overnight in the US markets. Japan's Nikkei, South Korea's Kospi and the Hang Seng all down. In fact, look at the Kospi down almost 4%, 2.5% lower on both the Hang Seng and the Nikkei. The rout in Asia reflected the spillover from a steep drop in Wall Street action overnight. The Nasdaq and the S&P 500 declined around 2%, wiping out nearly $3 trillion in investor wealth. That's the story as far as the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq are concerned for you. Tech names including Nvidia, Oracle and AMD suffered the steepest decline. The global sentiment also weighed on our markets, and our markets closing lower, 0.5% lower for both the Sensex and the Nifty, and the mid-cap index dropped by about 1%, so closing in the red. However, markets are up over 1% for the week. Prashant joins us now to take us through the week's market action. Prashant, how would you sum up the week gone by, and more importantly, the cues that we need to watch out for?
A roller coaster of a week it was, and of course, into Friday, the excitement did not die down. For most of the week, of course, the excitement was in the US markets with sell-offs, debate about AI, etc. Here, we had a steady week for the most part. On Thursday, getting to within 30 points of a new high for the Nifty. But then on Friday, especially in the last 60, 90 minutes of trade, with the rupee going into a bit of a tizzy, the market here sold off as well. I'll just give you the Friday to Friday closes. Nifty up about 0.6% still. Nifty Bank up about 0.6. Mid-cap index down 0.75%. The small-cap index lost about 2%, 2.2 to be precise. If you want to sort of look at this sectorally, real estate was the top losing sector, about 4% cut. Metals this week down 3. Defense as the area was down 3%, actually 2%, beg your pardon. The gainers were the IT services index with that big move in the middle of the week, 1.6 though for the week. Autos 1%, the consumer sector was up 0.9% as well. Large caps now, so Max Health was the big nifty gainer, 7%. Aisha was up 7%. And then, of course, it falls off with a 3% gain for Bharti. The big cut, Tata Motors passenger vehicle, another 7.5% loss here. Adani Enterprises down 3.6%. Tata Steel down about 3.6%. as well. Now we come to the broader space and a fair bit of dispersion here for the most parts, except maybe Thursday and Friday when things went very, very quiet. It was a pretty vibrant-looking screen. I'll start with what was up for the week. On a broader basis, Narayana Hrudayalaya was up 16.5%, M&M Finance was up 11%, TBO Tech 9% gains, GMR Airports 9%, Hero MotoCorp 8%, and Eris Life was up 7.5% as well. In terms of broader market losses, GMDC 14% loss. This one, HBL Engine, big outperformer over the years, of course, 13.5% pullback. KEC down 12. Samman Capital, there was that news flow out of the courts, 10% lower though for the week. It recovered from the lows. Sagility was down 9%, and JSW Energy was down about 8% as well. So, I mean, that's essentially the week and what it looked like. As we look ahead, the big question, of course, is whether U.S. markets will stabilize or there is more to go on the downside, especially with regards to the Magnificent Seven and, of course, that entire AI trade. And I think that's how we will pick up the pieces when we come back on Monday morning and trade on from there. Back to you.
Yes, we will be back Monday morning with the market action. Prashant, many thanks for joining us. And Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang has dismissed the talks of an AI bubble. Speaking at an investor call after the Q3 earnings, Huang said he's seeing something, and I quote, very different. Take a look.
There's been a lot of talk about an AI bubble. From our vantage point, we see something very different. As a reminder, Nvidia is unlike any other accelerator. We excel at every phase of AI, from pre-training and post-training to inference.
Well, that's Jensen Huang on AI valuations and concerns on whether they are far overstretched. But let's talk about the rupee, because the Indian rupee hit a new low of 89.49 to the dollar after a flurry of late trades. Dealers are largely blaming the absence of the RBI as a reason for the fall, and then RBI's intervention for arresting the fall as well. Some dealers say the RBI reappeared and sold dollars in late trade. Lata, what's going on with the rupee? What prompted this kind of a move today?
Well, that's the guess in the market. Around 240, in a matter of a minute, the rupee depreciated from about 88.70 levels to 89.49 level. The explanation for the market is that the Reserve Bank was always expected to come in and support that 88.79.80 mark. They have been doing that for the last several weeks. Usually what happens is when you notice the Reserve Bank protecting a level, people start writing options at that point. You sell the dollar at that level. In fact, there is a widespread belief that the rupee has already depreciated a lot. It's depreciated more than the fair value. You normally measure it by the REER and NEER terms, which is real effective exchange rate and nominal effective exchange rate, comparing rupee's inflation to the inflation of its trading partners. By that standard, the rupee is, devaluated much more. About 2-3% undervalued. The expectation in global markets is that people are selling the dollar versus the rupee, because when the trade deal comes, the rupee is expected to go to about 87.50 or 88 levels. Therefore, the market was not prepared for the crossing of 89. Once that happened, all those who were sitting short had to immediately come and cover because their stop losses were triggered. That created a natural momentum of dollar buying, and that took the rupee very quickly to the 89.50 mark, at which level people believe the Reserve Bank has come. Now, one logic in the market is probably the Reserve Bank was testing. Since everyone is saying fundamentally the rupee is undervalued, why not wait to see what is the natural level? Let's not intervene. But usually the central bank doesn't stay for 70 pice or 1% of the fall. So there is a lot of anger against the Reserve Bank for not coming in earlier, for not allowing a gentle depreciation of the rupee. At the moment, 89.50 is seen as the new Lakshman Rekha, the new level which the Reserve Bank might defend. But its sacredness is all of half an hour. We have to really wait and see how things pan out. At the moment, the rupee is clearly undervalued, but it can still fall. Who is to say if the Reserve Bank doesn't come and support?
Well, we will have to wait to see how this pans out, but that's a new record low for the rupee. Lata, many thanks for joining us. And on to the action in the crypto markets, where the Bitcoin continues its month-long fall. The cryptocurrency has fallen to its lowest level in the last 7 months, dropping below the $86,000 mark. The entire crypto market has shed almost $1.2 trillion in value since October. Investors are reducing exposure to riskier assets amidst fading expectations of another cut by the Federal Reserve next month. Well, the U.S. sanctions on Russian crude oil coming into effect today. In a statement, Reliance Industries has said it has stopped the imports of Russian crude oil. Reliance said, and I quote, "From the 1st of December, all oil product exports from the SEZ refinery will be obtained from non-Russian crude oil. This transition has been completed ahead of schedule to ensure full compliance with product import restrictions," end of quote. The company has also said that all pre-committed liftings of Russian crude are being honoured since shipping and logistic plans have already been finalised. However, any consignment after the 20th of November will be diverted to the company's domestic tariff area refinery, which is outside the scope of any new SEZ restrictions. The U.S. has also imposed sanctions on 2 Indian entities and individuals alleging involvement in crude oil trade with Iran. The U.S. Treasury Department lists includes Maharashtra-based RN Ship Management Private Limited and Pune-based TR6 Petro India. 17 entities and individuals from around the world have also been sanctioned, according to the department's statement. These entities were helping Iran generate funds for its nuclear program. On to CNBC-TV18 exclusive, Mahindra Group CEO Anish Shah has said the group is looking to grow in multiples, not percentages. This as the heads of 14 group companies came together on television for the first time at their annual Investor Day. Speaking to CNBC-TV18, Anish Shah said the market value of the growth gems has not been captured and promises big value unlock in the days ahead.
Auto continues to be a mainstay for us and our most exciting business, as we always see in all our forums. But other businesses have grown rapidly, and farm continues to be a huge deliverer of both profit as well as cash. I will highlight our growth gems. We've been talking about that for some time. When we started the journey on growth gems, collectively they were worth 8,000 crores in March 2020. Today, they're worth 56,000 crores, which is a 7x growth in a little more than 5 years. Mahindra's share in them, because some of them are listed, is 48,000 crores. And the value of our growth gems to Mahindra today is higher than the value of Tech Mahindra or Mahindra Finance to growth gem. We did mention to investors that we would look at one new area in the next 12 months with a very high bar. We had exactly the same slide that we put up a year ago. And at that point, we had said insurance is one area we would look at. We have gotten into insurance in a space where we feel we can create very meaningful value for our shareholders. And similarly, if we find a space we can create meaningful value, we will look at it. We do play in 70% of India's GDP growth over the next decade. And therefore, our current businesses have huge room to go. And you're seeing that room to grow with holidays. You're seeing that room to grow with many of our other businesses. We've also talked about organic growth. Organically, we've grown 25% a year for the last 5 years across the group, despite being in some tough industries as well. And we plan to grow 15 to 40% organically for the next 5 years across businesses.
Well, that's the Mahindra Group on their vision for 2030. You can catch that conversation with the top brass of the Mahindra Group at 5:30 p.m. and 9:30 p.m. right here on CNBC-TV18. Well, news just coming in. A Tejas fighter jet taking part in a demonstration at the Dubai Air Show has crashed. The plane made by Hindustan Aeronautics went down this afternoon while performing an aerial display before a large crowd. It is not clear yet if the pilot ejected before the crash. The Indian Air Force has confirmed that the Tejas fighter jet has crashed at the Dubai Air Show. Details are being ascertained. As you can see on your screens, a plume of black smoke rose above the airport after the crash. This is, of course, a developing story, and we will get you more details during the course of the next few hours. But we are still awaiting a statement from Hindustan Aeronautics. That is the footage of the Dubai Air Show where the Tejas fighter jet has crashed earlier this afternoon. Well, up next, the Airports Authority of India kicks off its largest modernization drive, plans to revamp 65 airports at an estimated cost of 17,000 crore rupees. Details when we return. Online trading platform Grow's profit jumped 12% in its first set of earnings after its listing last week. This as a 9% fall in employee expenses offset higher marketing spends. However, revenue down 9%. Active clients declined year on year, even as the company's market share expanded. That's Grow's earnings for you. The probe into the death of Ola Electric employee Arvind Kannan has been transferred now to the Central Crime Branch. This comes after his family petitioned senior police officials for an independent time-bound inquiry. The 38-year-old engineer died by suicide on the 28th of September in Bengaluru. Police recovered a 28-page note alleging workplace harassment, unpaid dues and heavy pressure, naming senior officials including the CEO Bhavish Agarwal. Indigo will invest over 7,000 crore rupees in its wholly owned subsidiary Indigo IFSC this fiscal. The arm will use the funds to acquire aviation assets, allowing the airline to own more of its aircraft. The investment will be a mix of equity and preferential shares infused in multiple tranches. In a statement, the company said the move highlights its focus on smart capital use and long-term value creation. On to a CNBC-TV18 exclusive. The Airports Authority of India has kicked off its largest modernization drive. AI plans to revamp 65 airports with modern equipment and air traffic control towers at an estimated cost of 17,000 crore rupees over the next 5 years. Madhiya is here with more details. Madhiya.
Well, the Airports Authority of India has begun its biggest ever modernization of air navigation services to enhance the airspace capacity. Airlines might add aircraft, but not having enough airspace to navigate can slow down India's aviation growth story. So here's how Airports Authority plans to deploy the 17,000 crores. The plan is to modernize 65 ATC towers by 2029. About 60% of the funds go into civil works and 40% into new automation and navigation technology, as well as enhancing cyber security, which is very important considering the cyber attacks that ATC towers could come under. So 65 airports which have been identified for major overhauls and 54 will undergo minor routine improvements. So of the 65 airports, 13 airports that have more than 100 flight movements per day have been identified, of which 5 airports will see total revamps. 8 airports will get revamps of the air navigation systems. So 22 airports will see ATC towers revamped along with new ANS, which is air navigation systems. 26 airports will retain their towers but get new ANS systems, and 4 airports will see construction of new towers with new equipment. And these 4 airports where the new towers will come up at Bhogapuram, Navi Mumbai, Dholera and Jewar airports, which are all high growth, high traffic locations preparing for large scale expansion. Now, AI says that the objective is simple: handle more flights safely and efficiently by improving automation, flight sequencing and runway throughput. India currently, remember, handles 44 to 46 landings an hour at its busiest airports, including the Mumbai International Airport, which is well below the 56 to 57 landings per hour seen globally. But modernization, remember, also needs skilled manpower. AI recruits 800 to 1,000 air traffic controllers a year, and that number will need to rise significantly with capacity expansion and the new towers coming up. So AI currently trains air traffic controllers at Prayagraj, Hyderabad and Gondia. The Prayagraj center will now be upgraded with new buildings, simulators and radar systems. AI says this upgrade cycle is essential as India prepares for a surge in new aircraft and new airports, and the entire program of the 17,000 crore investment for expansion of airspace capacity is targeted for completion by 2029.
Madhiya, many thanks for joining us. The Airports Authority on a modernization drive. Justice B.R. Gavai retiring after a 41-year career and a 6-month tenure as the 52nd Chief Justice of India. He assumed office in May this year. Justice Suryakant will succeed him, taking charge as the Chief Justice from the 24th of November. Ashmit recaps the key moments of Justice Gavai's tenure. Ashmit.
Well, Justice B.R. Gavai today hangs up his boots as India's 52nd Chief Justice of India. But while his tenure was brief, about 6 months, the impact of the decisions that he took will be anything but. Justice B.R. Gavai was the country's only second Dalit Chief Justice of India. His term at the helm was just a little over 6 months. He's scheduled to superannuate on November 23rd, and since that's a Sunday, today is the last working day for the chief. So let's look back at the last 6 months of his tenure. Now, his latest judicial decision was the opinion that courts do not have the power to give a deadline to the president and to the governors to decide on the bills passed by the state assemblies. This went against Supreme Court's own April judgment, which imposed a 3-month deadline. It was widely criticized for potentially paralyzing lawmaking in states and encouraging obstructionism. In another key decision, Justice Gawai reversed a judgment that barred the practice of retrospectively getting environmental clearance for a project that has already been constructed. Some fear that this reversal will allow companies to begin projects, start cutting trees without environmental clearance and get one retrospectively by paying a penalty. Another reversal was on the legacy dispute involving AGR dues of telecom companies. Since 2019, the Supreme Court had passed multiple orders confirming the original AGR demand. But in the latest petition filed by Vodafone Idea, Justice Gawai-led bench allowed the government to recompute the demand and grant relief to Vodafone Idea, citing special circumstances. In another landmark decision, Justice Gawai-led bench struck down the Tribunal's Reforms Act of 2021. He reprimanded the government for reintroducing provisions which had previously been set aside. He slammed the centre for trying to overrule Supreme Court orders by making a new law. Now, before becoming the CJI, he was also a part of the bench that upheld the demonetization exercise of 2016. He also ruled in favour of abrogation of Article 370. He was also a part of the bench that struck down electoral bonds for political funding. Now, Justice Gawai also went viral when he dismissed a petition for restoration of a Lord Vishnu idol by saying, "Go and ask the deity." This caused a lawyer to throw a shoe at the CJI while he was seated in Court 1 of the Supreme Court. Justice Gawai also made the news when the Supreme Court administration issued a letter to the government nudging it to evict former CJI Justice D.Y. Chandrachud from the formal residence. It has also been flagged how no women judges were appointed to the top court under his tenure. Now, his decisions, comments and actions often made the evening news. And while he may have his plaudits, some of the recent actions have led to strong criticism and concern.
All right, Ashmit, many thanks for joining us. The Chief Justice of India, B.R. Gawai, retiring, and Justice Suryakant to take over. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Business 360. The news will continue right here on CNBC-TV18. We're back in a minute with more.